Autobots, transform, roll out, and enjoy the show.
Autobots, transform, and roll out. This is our review of Void Rivals 28, which released on the 25th of March, 2026 by Skybound. It is, of course, written by Robert Kirkman with art by Andre Bresson, and it is the Quintesson War Part 4 of 6. Honestly, the issue is beautiful as always, with a couple of spreads that look absolutely wonderful. In addition to that, we get a flashback to Solilla's past, and I think that it sheds a light and tells us more about just how harsh the Zertonians are, especially Solilla. I say all of this, of course, I've only been reading these names as a reminder, so I am pronouncing them multiple different ways, and who knows how it's going to end up being settled phonetically, but I've only been reading them for the past 3 years, so, absolutely bear with me. Then, of course, we have Minister Doolin, again, going with these names as I've been reading them, and honestly, his development over the last year has been absolutely incredible, but also his relationship and the changes between Doolin, Derek, and Dukin, which makes me laugh every time I say it aloud. It makes my son laugh too. But it's the parallels between how harsh their Zertonians are versus I guess the inviting nature of the Agorians is a wonderful parallel that I continue to love. Now, obviously, when this started off, when I first talked about Void Rivals, 3 years ago, there's very much a Romeo and Juliet in space and nature to it. And I feel like it wears those parallels, right on its sleeve. And I don't think any of that's hidden, and I think it's a fair one, although as simple as that parallel may be. But this is the Quintesson War. So while we get great character moments, and learning a little bit more depth about these two warring factions, it's what the Quintessons add to the mythology and add to the larger narrative that is exciting. And that is the War Tribunal. And I loved his introduction. I loved his dialogue. It was campy in like the best 1980s kind of way. I love him running off his crimes and then going, "You are bad at war." And I'm just like, you know what? I can hear that in G1. And again, Kirkman grew up with G1, and so did I. Well, I was born after G1, but I was born at the height of G1 reruns. So like that was my introduction to Transformers, and that dialogue feels right at home. It absolutely does, and so I love that. Now again, though, we're over halfway to the end of this of the Quintesson War, and I feel like there's so much here that we could take our time on, that we could have more depth with, that we could have spent more time on, that the pace is moving so quickly. We check in on Cobra Law, and the issue ends. It's very, very quick. And I feel like, for me, in my opinion, after all this build-up with this War Tribunal, the Tribunal, this super threatening entity, I kind of thought it would get the big cliffhanger, and it didn't. So that kind of caught me by surprise. I feel like the ending we did get wasn't major, and in a 6-issue war, and maybe this is me as a comic book fan and whatever, but I think the end of every issue needs to have some. It needs to have a big cliffhanger, because it's a war. And I feel like the War Tribunal should have had that. He should have had a big moment this issue. I assume it's coming in issue 4, but can you imagine if issue 3 ended with something impactful, and then issue 4 kicks into it? Whereas ending on Cobra Law's moment it's just kind of a settling moment. It's not a heart-racing moment. It just kind of settles like, oh, okay. It's not a, oh my God, what happens next? I love how all these factions are, intersecting between the Quintessons, the Zirconians, the Agorians, and then, of course, Cobra Law. I'm curious to see how this war shapes out. I don't want to get too far ahead. We still have issues 5 and 6. We'll see what ends up happening. But overall, I feel like we could have slowed it down. I understand in terms of trades being 6 issues, but can you imagine if this was a year-long event? and just having, really being able to sit in it. Maybe I'm crazy, in terms of older comic book style storytelling. I don't think you necessarily have to always write for the trade. That's just me. Even if it was, 7 or 8 issues and it goes into the next trade a little bit, like not everything has to, it doesn't have to be that super clean. And maybe that's just an out of date way of thinking, and it's not ever going to be like that. But I think I feel like just based on the moments we've already had between issues 1 through 4, we could have slowed it down. And because I would have liked to have been in this moment, in this war a little longer. And again, we'll preface all of that saying, let's wait and see how it ends and see what the status quo is after this. But everything here, I'm super loving. The art is absolutely beautiful, and I love the twist on the Quintesson. So in the comments below, what was your favorite moment from this issue? Who is coming out to be your favorite character? And, honestly, because we're at this point, how do you see the Quintesson War ending? Let me know in the comments below, and please consider liking this video, subscribing if you're new, and sharing this with your friends. Above all else, most importantly, till all are one.